Hello, BookTube. I was torn this morning as to what to do. The sky was low gray clouds with the threat of chilly, spitting rain. Perfect weather, in other words, for curling up on a pile of pillows in bed with a little schnauzer curled up next to me and reading until the weather goes away, until we have to go outside, one or the other, whichever comes first. But on the other hand, uh, today is the day of the every other month Boston Public Library book sale put on by the Friends of the Boston Public Library, which can often be a lot of fun. My last couple of visits to the Boston Public Library book sale have been pretty good. In previous years, some of those visits were completely ruined by the presence of those insectile, non-human book dealers with their phone apps that just sweep a whole shelf of books onto a pile on the floor and scan them. And if you go up to look at those books, they say, "No, these are mine." Because they're not human, they're not alive, it ought to be legal to kill them. I've had to, for a couple of consecutive Boston Public Library book sales in pre-COVID days, I actually had to simply say to them, you can't ask the Friends of the Boston Public Library to be police, I actually had to say to the people, I'm going to take all these books and put them back on the shelf. If you want them, you pick them one at a time and you hold them in your arm or in a basket like everybody else. If you don't like that, I'll throw you out of the room. I really don't like to do that sort of thing. It flirts with anger. I don't like to even come close to it. And the last few times I was at the Boston Public Library sale, I didn't have to do anything like that. There were a couple of dealers, but they largely behaved themselves and kept to themselves. Maybe one of the friends had a word with them. That would be great. I think, of course, that they should be forbidden to enter the event. Just make the event no cell phones. They have no idea what they're looking at. They don't care about books. They are, in their minds, they're toting up 5-cent profits on eBay. They have no idea whether or not the book they're looking at has any kind of interest or value. They're only going by what their app tells them. With it, you take their phone away, they might as well be at a shoe sale. And that would leave the book sale for readers, for people who love reading, instead of what these people are, which is the bookish equivalent of slave traders. They absolutely do not care about the books at all. They are only concerned with what the app tells them. But the last couple of times, they were largely absent, so I was torn. Do I go to the Boston Public Library book sale even though I don't need any more books? Even though I want to help the Friends of the Boston Public Library, but I don't need any more books? Or do I stay in bed and miss a book sale that's right nearby? So I voxered Britta and asked her, and I got a stream of obscenities. I voxered Micah, and I got a stream of obscenities. I voxered Hannah, and I got an even longer stream of obscenities. So I assumed from that the super cool influencers on BookTube pretty much wanted me to go. So I went. I went out into the spitting rain on a gray, cloudy morning. I surfeited my baby with treats. I assured her that I would be back, and I went to the Boston Public Library book sale. And I found a pile of books. I found an absolute pile of books that I want to show you. Let's start off with, there are two piles that are about the same size. We'll start off with mass market paperbacks. I just got a basket and loaded up everything. It wasn't even really a case of the minimal vetting that I do at the Brattle Bookshop sale lot, where I will fill my arm with books, but then when I'm done, I'll sort of go through them and say, all right, well, this was an impulse. I don't really want, or something like that. When it comes to a library book sale, I tend not to do that. So I grabbed everything. I basically grabbed everything that was of interest to me until I reached my carrying capacity. So the first pile is paperbacks with one exception. And the first paperback is a little bit of an exception on its own. This is an old antique Nio Marsh mystery, Hand in Glove. I liked the cover. I don't have a whole set of I have Nio Marsh in ebook, and I prefer to read them that way. But a cute little cover like this, I wasn't going to pass up. And I read this. This is an Inspector Allen mystery from late in the series of Inspector Allen, and if I remember correctly, it's when this was done, there really wasn't anything explicitly like a cozy mystery. But if I remember correctly, this shares in common with cozy mysteries something little bit odd, a little bit off-putting. Usually in cozy mysteries, the person who ends up murdered, the person who is nominally the focus of a murder mystery, was someone that won't be missed, someone that nobody liked. And I seem to remember that the murder victim in this novel is someone who is so boring to everyone around him that even Inspector Allen can't really work up a passion for figuring out who killed him. But I could be wrong. I might be mixing that up with another Nio Marsh. But I got this. This is one of these old, green paperback things. Won't take more than one reading. And then the next one is the only, I guess you could say, hardcover in this pile of paperbacks. And this was just sheer curiosity. That's all. This is A Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. But it's in one of these little leather, flexible type things, these gift things where you'll get the whole of them, all of the books in the series in one box. I've seen this for, Song of Ice and Fire. I've seen it for Lord of the Rings many, many times. But I've never actually come across a copy like that of Lord of the Rings, that I could reach out and buy. I've seen pictures online and in other people's videos. So I figured I would get this. This is the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire. I have no idea whether or not this will be congenial to read, as an experience to read. Necessarily the pages will be smaller, so, will it be uncomfortable to read? I have no idea. But like I said, I've seen it on science fiction and fantasy related booktube videos, and that made me curious, so I grabbed it. And I should mention that science fiction and fantasy related YouTube videos haunted this trip to the Boston Public Library. Three videos in particular, which I will link down below if I remember to do it. One was a recent shelf tour by Stephen Andrews, the outlaw bookseller. If you don't subscribe to his channel and you're a sci-fi fan, you are missing a feast, an absolute feast. He went through just another shelf tour. He has very limited space, so his books are packed in, and he just walks you through them. There are people who do library tours where they pull the book off the shelf, they show you the book, and then they put the book, they tell you the title and the author, and then they put the book back on the shelf. And then there are windbags, such as myself, or Jason Harrigan, or Mark Richardson, or Stephen Andrews, who know a lot about the books that they're taking off the shelf. They can take them off and extempore with no notes talk about them. And he does that. His channel is just wonderful. So I had science fiction on the brain because of him. Then another of the three videos was Michael K. Vaughan, of course, who recently introduced us to these boxes of old science fiction paperbacks that he has at Stately Vaughan Manor, and that he's developed a kind of a mission to read them all, because the lady of Vaughan Manor asked him in a way that I would tell him to be wary about. I have been down this road myself. She actually pointed out that she thought it was unlikely that he could read all the science fiction and fantasy that he has before he dies. I think he took that as a personal challenge. Maybe his knees are creaking where they didn't 20 years ago. But he showed us the contents of one of those boxes, and oh my, it took me down memory lane. I have owned and read almost every one of the books that he showed, and it reminds me of how much science fiction and fantasy I have read in my life, just a mountain of it. And the third video is really a gem, just an amazing thing. Michael at Fit to Be Read just recently did a video on the 200 plus best science fiction novels. It's a time investment of a video. It's long, but it is, as you know, if you watch his channel, it's beautifully produced. And the key to a video like that is not that you agree with his choices. The key is that it gets you thinking about his thoughts, his choices, and your own. I will leave a link to all three videos, but those three together conspired to have me in a science fiction and fantasy mind frame. So when the Boston Public Library book sale served me up box after box after box of science fiction and fantasy, I grabbed a whole bunch of it. So I got a Lynn Carter anthology. This is Flashing Swords number 4. I think I have Flashing Swords number 1, or maybe number 2. These are old, the green paperback anthologies of... not the best artwork in the world, but these are anthologies of sword and sorcery stories. What is in here? I know you'll want to know. Let's see what's in here. A Bag Full of Dreams by Jack Vance. The Tupilak by Poul Anderson. Storm in a Bottle by John Jakes. That's a Brack the Barbarian story. That I have read. I don't think I've read the first two. Swords Against the Marlook by Catherine Kurtz. I definitely haven't read that. And The Land Beyond the World by Michael Moorcock, which is from the Elric cycle. So good stuff. That's Elric on the cover, of course. So an anthology. There were a bunch of anthologies there. Oh my. If I'd had muscular teenagers with me, I would have gotten a lot more books. If I didn't have to do the carrying myself, if I had Sherpas with me, once again, the person at the checkout commented on the fact that I don't have any Sherpas with me, because for years I did. For years and years, I did. I had either my boys, my muscular teenagers, my weightlifters, or I had other booktubers. This is the pattern now of going by myself, so that I have to stop with what I can carry. But anyway, this next one is an old Daw yellow spine paperback, and this is one that I explicitly saw on Michael K. Vaughan's, science fiction in boxes. This is Roger Zelazny, To Die in Italbar, which I haven't read since it first came out. I don't know when this came out. Oh, we have a little more cover art. Doesn't look practical as a mount, but let's see. This came out in 1973. Oh my God. I haven't read it since then. I was reminded of it when I saw Michael's video. This is the story of a guy named H. We're not really sure. I mean, in the course of the book, he has a few names that start with H, but he is in love with a nexus of energy that is calling itself a goddess, and that communicates with him mentally and also audibly, and acts like a goddess. And he is in love with that force, and that force is gradually transforming him into a nexus of all disease. He has had all diseases, he has survived all diseases, and he's a vector for all diseases. So to die in Italbar is the flip side of to live in Italbar. He can fix his presence in a city or a village, can fix diseases, but it can also afflict the village with disease. And there are two warring galactic organizations, and one of them thinks this is the gift of all gifts. This is the ultimate weapon. I can't remember which of the galactic organizations has an operative named Enrico Caruso. It's been too long since I read this, so I'll read it again. When I read it, 50 years ago, my thought was what it has usually been when it comes to Zelazny, which is that he is a short story writer, almost exclusively, and that his novels show it. They really show it, because you get the gist of the short story in the first 30 pages, and then it's just people schlepping around, which is great for your page count, but that's not what a novel does. A novel isn't just more schlepping around than a short story. It actually has a structure of its own. So we will see. Maybe I will think different this time around. I'm pretty sure, a little disappointing, I'm pretty sure this is the only Daw yellow spine paperback that I found. It was the kind of library sale as I was expecting to see 30 of them. Then this next one, the Boston Public Library book sale was in love with this guy. I do not know this author at all. The author is Charles L. Harness. This is a book called The Ring of Ritternell. The appearance of The Ring of Ritternell is something of a publishing event. It bloody well is not. It is a brand new science fiction novel by the American author Charles Harness, an almost legendary figure in SF circles. Good Lord, I am totally ignorant of this author. After a brilliant writing career in the late 1940s and early 1950s, he turned to the law, specializing in patent work in his home state of Maryland. Okay. His first novel was The Paradox Men. Now, the Paradox Men I know only from an anecdote. Donald Walheim used to tell an anecdote about how he read that book when it didn't have that title. I'm pretty sure that The Paradox Men is Don Walheim's title for whatever that book was. But I think the story went that he realized that he was in the presence of greatness. So maybe I should have remembered this guy's name from that story. This book creates a future world of terror and beauty, peopled with remarkable characters such as Omere, the poet laureate of the home planet Goris Card, and his brother Jamie, who is trapped between the opposing forces of Ritternell and Alea, a reluctant pawn in the future of his universe. Well, this is a blurb from Brian Aldiss. This came out in 1968. It has a blurb from Brian Aldiss. I know that Don Waldheim was a fan of this, so Maybe I'm missing a big author. Certainly, the reason that I say that the Boston Public Library book sale was in love with this author is because there must have been 15 books with his name on them, big omnibus volumes, a whole bunch of other paperbacks. I grabbed one because, despite what anybody says, I might not like him. Then I found another old anthology. There were a million of these things. I picked one. This is edited by Leo Margulies, and it is Three from Out There, with a great old-fashioned cover. This has a story by Isaac Asimov, Damon Knight, and Edmund Hamilton, the author of Captain Future. So the Asimov story is Mother Earth, which I've read. The Damon Knight story is Double Meaning. I have not read that. I haven't read much Damon Knight. And the Edmund Hamilton story is Son of Two Worlds, which I have read in a different cheesy anthology that I maybe got the last Boston Public Library book sale. Then the next one I got is one of these old Fritz Leiber volumes. This is The Swords of Lankmar. This is book 5 in the Farford and Grey Mouser series from this old paperback series. And I got a bunch of these the last time I was at the BPL book sale, and I could not, for the life of me, remember which ones I had and didn't have, so I grabbed this. I mean, really, if you're when you're in doubt, if you're thinking that you might plug a hole in a gap in a collection, if you're remembering correctly, I don't take notes. I don't keep notes on my phone. And even if I did keep notes on my phone at the Boston Public Library book sale, of all places, that is the last place in the world I would take out my phone and look at it while I was looking at books, because that is the very action of the creatures that I hate the most in the world, those insectile book dealers. One of them was there today. He was blocking a biography shelf, and I was ready to sort of make conversation with him as a polite way to get him to share the shelf. And then I saw that he had his phone looking at an app, and I came that close to talking to one of these creatures instead of kicking them or farting while they're around, which is the only appropriate response. But I did do a lot of chatting to people in the room, downstairs in the BPL, because it's not like the Brattle. When I'm in the Brattle sale lot and I see other people browsing, I don't want to intrude on that experience. Unless it's an old crony, unless it's somebody that I've known forever at the Brattle, I'll intrude all day long with them. But if it's just a stranger, I don't usually do it. Even if they're contemplating a book that I can recommend, I still won't do it. But with a library book sale, that feels more communal. That feels different. Of course, it draws its share of Fruit Loops. I gave them a wide berth, but I was happy to talk to the normal people. But anyway, next we have a Robert Silverberg. You can't go to one of these. The minute I saw how many box after box after box, tray after tray, table after table of science fiction, I knew that Robert Silverberg would be there, and I found one of his better books, one of his most famous books, with the cover that I like. This is the Book of Skulls, with the gilt still on the name there. It's got a little dirt, as you can see, but a lot of these did. I imagine they've been donated or sitting in boxes for a long time. I'll clean up a lot of these things, but this is just terrific. It's weird. It borders on new wave, but not. It's not exactly. It's a weird book. Very at times very prurient, but I think this has a different cover. I know that the last time I had a mass market paperback, this had a different cover, a sort of a naked male torso with a skull on top of it. And I've always liked this cover better. I think this is just neat. This is the story of 4 friends who are on a road trip. They have discovered something called the Book of Skulls that leads them to the House of Skulls, a place where the monks are immortal and might be able to bestow immortality on them. And it's only once they get there and learn more about it that they realize that it is true. Immortality can be bestowed by these immortal monks, but only on 2 of them. And the other 2 die as a price of it. And I read this, when did this come out? 1972. I read this, 50 years ago, and I remember exactly where I was. I remember thinking, not only what kind of friends, but what kind of people are you? Don't take the deal. That's too high a price to pay for immortality. Of course it is. But I haven't read this in a long time. I won't say that it's 50 years, because I think I reread it with the cover that I'm talking about, which is just one figure in the middle. It was a cover artist from the 90s that you will recognize. I don't know the name. I wanted it with this cover. I never thought I'd find it. So now I'll give it a reread. Then we have Damon Knight. I do not, I am not a fan of Damon Knight. I don't know his work really at all, but I found a cheesy old paperback called Off Center that I believe is a collection of stories. Yeah. What Rough Beast, The Second Class Citizen, Be My Guest, which I've read and everyone's read, God's Nose, and Catch That Martian. Those are, so this is just a few, oh, uh-oh. Could it be trash? Well, I got that just because, I don't have any other Damon Knight. Then this next one, when I was at the Brattle the other day, I found a bunch of fantasy novels that, at least in my initial reading, the novels themselves, or maybe the authors, were only so-so. They were sort of writing average fantasy, nothing that really leaps off the page. I thought I'd give them another try just to see whether or not that was true. Certainly the first volume in the series of any of these. And today I found the first volume in a fantasy series by an author that I would group that way. So, I'll throw it on the pile here. This is Dow K. Sweet cover. This is The Reluctant Swordsman by Dave Duncan. Book 1 in the 7th Sword series. No idea how long this series went. I remember these. I used to stock them in the bookstore. I know that this is a sort of swapped body thing along the lines of Jose Philippe Farmer, where, well, it'll tell me. The last thing Wally Smith remembered was a fog of hospitals, grim-faced doctors, and pain. So when he woke in the body of a barbarian swordsman, attended by a beautiful slave girl and a wizened old priest nattering about the goddess, he assumed it was a fever dream. And like Stephen R. Donaldson, like Thomas Covenant, he has to just decide whether or not this world is a dream and how he's going to act regardless. I remember this being sort of okay, but I will give it a try. Maybe it was more. Then we have blocks of authors, one big and one small. We'll start with the small. The small is Keith Laumer. Wrote an enormous amount. I just got a book of his at the Brattle. A later book of his. His later books aren't really that good. But I got a Retief book. He's famous for his Retief series, a two-fisted diplomat in having science fiction adventures. I got Retief to the Rescue, which has a Rowena cover. So that's a large part of what I got it for. But it was also a hardcover. I just snapped it up. I didn't have a copy at the time. But I found another one, another Keith Laumer, and also with a Rowena cover. This is The Time Bender, which I assume I think this is the first in a series about a guy who goes to alternate Earths, all kinds of alternate dimension Earths, where it gives Laumer a chance to play around with history and whatnot. I haven't read this in eons. I'm sure this is the 1970s as well, and I'm sure that I haven't read it since then. 1971. Good Lord. So, like I said, once upon a time, I plowed through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things a year. Just everything that was on the metal spinner rack, just everything that I could find. Those were in the days, of course, before the internet and before eBay. I'm gathering from a lot of people on BookTube that it is possible to go to eBay and just put in a bid for a gigantic box of random science fiction novels, including stuff like this. And then you just get it delivered to your home. That is very tempting. I'm very curious to know what that would be like. But anyway, we have a couple more Keith Laumer. This next one is The Other Side of Time. And one of these, just a pulpy old paperback. Somebody scribbled on it in pen. Colonel Brian Bayard. I think that the Time Bender is Lafayette O'Flaherty. Is that right? Or Lafayette O'Flannery? The regular characters? Are you going to tell me? Lafayette O'Leary. Sorry, Lafayette O'Leary. You can keep those Irish apart. This is the first, I think, in the Lafayette O'Leary books. This I don't know at all. Colonel Brian Bayard. I don't know at all. But this will be another novel where the main character ends up in some sort of alternate reality surrounded by monsters. And then an anthology, another anthology. So we have a Damon Knight anthology, but then also 9 by Keith Laumer, 9 by Laumer, which has this funky old cover. And I think this may be his first anthology of short stories. And I don't know his I don't know his short stories well enough to know at all. I'm sure I won't know any of them. Hybrid, End as a Hero, The Walls, Dinochrome, Placement Test, Doorstep, The Long Remembered Thunder, Cocoon, A Trip to the City. I don't think I've ever read any of those. They don't ring a bell. But this thing will certainly, these paperbacks will certainly survive at least one reading. However old they are, they will. And that's all I want from the Boston Public Library book sale. Then the next block is Lynn Hightower. I do not know this author at all. I remember these books vaguely from the 80s, I'm assuming, from the covers. Is that right? No, 1992. So the 90s. This is Alien Blues, where it's a police procedural. It just happens to have an alien in it. It happens to have science fiction elements in it. Earth is visited by this alien species, these big manta ray type things, and this tough as nails cop is partnered with one of them to solve a mystery. And I think these were a mild hit. I think fans sort of liked the mesh between police procedural and science fiction because there were a bunch of others. We have Alien Eyes. We have Alien Heat. And Alien Rights. And I have no idea if there are more of these things. I got 4 of them. I got as many as there were there. So I have no idea if there are more and I've just missed them. Then this next one, I had this once upon a time. Very happy to find it again in perfect condition. I mean, it was like my old copy, but I checked all of these things. None of these things have ever passed through my hands. This is by John Skipp and Craig Spector, who did The Light at the End, a very effective modern vampire novel, very good modern vampire novel. This is another book of theirs. This is Animals, which, if I remember correctly, is about sexy were creatures. Is that right? They've been with us forever, prowling the smoky roadhouse dives that are the watering holes and hunting grounds, predators lurking amidst the human herd. Changing shape at will, lusting for blood and meat, they are gods in the wild, gods in disguise, and they feed on the dark spark inside each of us. Sid was just another lonely working-class guy singing the Steel Town blues. Then he met Nora. She's sensual, erotic, amoral, a creature of the night, and she's luring Sid across the line that few can cross, and fewer survive the line that separates man from beast. So I remember reading this, but it's been a long time. And then finally, this next one was just a pure indulgence on my part. Like I said, I didn't really overthink any of this thing. This is obviously just a modern donation, a very modern donation. I saw this. Here, let me get the schmutz off it here. I saw this when I was up in Vermont a year ago, and I was sort of tempted, but I didn't get it then. But for this 50 cents or something like that, I was happy to get it. This is The Eye of the World, the first in the Wheel of Time series, only with the TV show cover, which is, in every way worse than the Dower K. Sweet cover on the original, but still kind of neat to have this. And this is 850 pages long, so this also definitely counts for Doorstopper Doom. I don't think. Well, what about the George R.R. Martin? Even in this format, what is this? 820 pages, so that counts as well. But Doorstopper Doom, this thing certainly I hadn't thought about rereading Eye of the World, especially since I just reread it last year. But like I said yesterday, I'm counting on happenstance, on serendipity to provide me with books for Doorstopper Doom. So those were the paperbacks. And then we have there are trade paperbacks, but those are the mass markets that I got. The first trade paperback that I got, this is from the aughts? 2017. I never got this from the publisher. I never really considered getting it in bookstores. It's not really my kind of thing, and I don't know if it could be. This is by Angus Watson, and it is You Die When You Die. Rather self-evident title. And this is Nordic, grimdark, noir fantasy type thing. The type of thing that the brothers Gwyn love so much. And I know that they love it at least in part because their father writes it really well. But it's never really done all that much for me. I can recognize, as well as anybody, the sporadic literary quality of, for instance, Patrick Rothfuss. And I can recognize as well as anybody the sheer sort of Quentin Tarantino fun of Joe Abercrombie, but the something about the way that these things are just absolutely choked with Clint Eastwood end scene lines. Even Papa Gwyn does that, where he will have a character putting on armor and saying, saying the kind of highly dramatic but ridiculous line, something that no person would actually say at the end of a scene, because in the mind of the author, that is where you break for commercial. That is entirely where such writing was learned on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and other things like that. And I might have I like those lines, when Joss Whedon did them on the small screen, I liked them, but in a book, they tend to feel a little bit easy to me, right? I mean, think about a line of the type of thing that I'm talking about that is really well done on the small screen. The TV show Angel, the spinoff from Buffy, right? The final episode of the series, it got canceled. A portal from another dimension is opening up. Monsters are pouring through it, including a gigantic dragon. And we have our core cast of heroes, led by Angel the Vampire. And just as the hour is about to end, Angel says, "Dibs on the dragon." And you love it. And you go off, to the commercial break or to the next hour of TV. But in a book, when every chapter is ending that way, but anyway, this is, you can't change your fate. So throw yourself into battle, because you'll either win or wake up drinking mead in the hall of your ancestors. It's about a character whose village is pillaged and he swears revenge or whatnot. Actually, how long is this thing? This also could be Doorstopper Doom. Oh no, this is 490 pages. Oh, it comes so close, but no. But the next one most certainly does. Look at how beautiful this is. I didn't even know that this existed. Shogun. In a beautiful trade paperback. That is just lovely. Inadvertently now, I sort of have a collection of Shogun. I have the original mass market paperback, with the white cover. Then the original mass market paperback was reissued with a red cover. I have that. Then there was a bigger trade paperback, taller than this thing, that came out with completely different cover art than either the mass market paperback or this. And I have that. That was lovely. And now I have this as well. I wasn't going to pass it up for $1. And this thing's huge, right? This thing will certainly qualify. Yeah, this is 1,200 pages. Then we have a couple of anthologies. I grabbed one just from 2018. I'm sure that a lot of the stories in here I've read, because a lot of them will have been pulled from magazine periodicals that I read, that I read and like. So, if you read a whole bunch of those, I read like 6 or 7 sci-fi and fantasy periodicals in the course of any given 1 or 2 months. So this is the year's best science fiction and fantasy from 2018. And it's edited by Rich Horton, who's not an editor that I know at all. So there'll probably be a lot of stuff in here that I know, but maybe a lot that I don't know. And ordinarily I would shy away from something like this because it's going to stick out on the shelf. I don't have any other volumes in this series. Who knows how long this has been going on. And I don't have any later than this. This was just the only one. I just grabbed it as sort of a browser's interest type thing. Unlike this next anthology, which is probably a keeper. This is the best American noir of the century, edited by James Ellroy and the great Otto Penzler. Big fat thing that has, noir from all of the 21st century, or 20th century. So who have we got in here? This is something that I will probably reinforce and keep. Even though Noir and I don't get along. James Cain, McKinley Cantor, good Lord, McKinley Cantor wrote Noir. I guess he did. I will always remember him and never forgive him for Andersonville. But I guess he did write other things. Dorothy Hughes, I had a bunch of read everything by Dorothy Hughes in ebook form in the Nook library that disappeared. I had all of that. Mickey Spillane, of course, David Goodis, Evan Hunter, Jim Thompson, Cornell Woolrich, David Morrell, fantastic, Patricia Highsmith. Oh, this has everybody. Okay, so this is the 20th century, and it ends with Lorenzo Carcaterra. All right, so I might have had this at one point or another, and it needs cleaning up, but a lot of these things do. I will clean it up, and then I will probably that will stay. Then this next one I've had this this book many times. This is a perfect example of just form over function, where I saw it and wanted this perfect form. This is a hardcover with a plastic dust jacket of the essays of E.B. White. So this, I have a trade paperback that has seen better days. I go back to these fairly regularly, especially since I write a column. I write a weekly column now for a handful of venues. And, other people have pointed out to me that that is a kind of an essay. It's nowhere near the art of, this is going to have to be cleaned up. But I'll clean up all of these. I have a battered trade paperback of this, and I see it occasionally at the Brattle with a battered dust jacket, but this is in perfect condition with protection. Then this next one, some of these are going to be a challenge when you go to a library book sale. A lot of times you're getting de-accessed library copies, and that's a lot of fuss and bother. You've got to take the plastic covering off it, get the stickers off the book itself. Like, for instance, do I have another example? Oh no, this might be the only example. You have to get the stickers off the book itself. All sorts of stuff like that you have to do. Sometimes it's worth it. And this, the publisher never sent me this. Not in a print book. I had only the ebook. This is These Precious Days by Ann Patchett. A collection of essays that I've read 4 of them. It turns out there's almost 20 of them in here. 4 of them showed up in magazines like Harper's, and I read those 4 and loved them. Absolutely loved them. Went into the first one years ago, sort of ambivalent because this person's fiction has never done anything for me, but the nonfiction is amazing. I'm so happy to have this volume because it has so much stuff in it that I haven't read. I'm just going to have to go in. That is underneath the plastic covering. So I got to get the plastic covering off this, get that off. It's covering part of the title, for God's sake. I have to get this stuff off the spine. It'll take a bit of time, half an hour, but it'll be worth it in the end. And then the final thing that I got is from the old, I think this is, the University of California Press. They did a long series of biographies of British monarchs, English monarchs and British monarchs. And this is Pauline Gregg's biography of King Charles I. Just a great big soup to nuts biography of Charles I. I had this book once upon a time. I didn't have it until today, and I don't have anything else. The only other thing that I have on Charles I in my Royals bookshelf is a big fat book called The Personal Rule of Charles I, which, it's about him doing without Parliament, but there's a lot of biography in it. I mean, it doesn't really work as a beginning to end biography, but it's done in a pinch. Until now, this will be just fine for me to have. And there you go. There is no possible way to do a Steve pyramid of these. I could do a Steve pyramid of the hardcovers. King Charles I, These Precious Days, one of the finds of the day, really. The essays of E.B. White, in a perfect condition. The best American noir of the century. The year's best science fiction and fantasy, 2018. Big copy of Shogun. I'm not in love with the specification of the Asia cycle, and then the year of where the book takes place, but is better than a number. And You Die When You Die by Angus Watson, who did he did a series, right? He did a series before this one that he was sort of known for. Yeah, the Iron Age trilogy. He did a series called the Iron Age trilogy that I remember it being really popular. I never read it. This will be my first with him. And then there are the mass market paperbacks, Dare I Try, Eye of the World, Animals by Skip Inspector, all of the Alien cop novels of Lynn Hightower, 3 books by Keith Laumer, 1 anthology and 2 in series, The Reluctant Swordsman by Dave Duncan, a collection by Damon Knight, who's also in 3 from Out There. He also has a novel in 3 from Out There. So, actually, I didn't check. Let's find out. So what was it again? The Damon Knight story is Double Meaning. Is Double Meaning in here? Did I buy Double Meaning twice? No, I did not. All right, so I actually have 7 stories by Damon Knight instead of. Oh God, I shouldn't have done that. My curiosity got the best of me. All right, we're undaunted here. Then we have The Book of Skulls by Robert Silverberg in the paperback that I actually wanted. How wonderful. The Swords of Lankmar, I'll go and find the others, see if maybe that was a double. I hope not. Then The Ring of Richornell. I'm going to find out who this guy is, this Charles Harness, and whether or not he is really the bee's knees that he is described to be. To Die in Italbar, straight from Stately Vaughan Manor. Can't wait to reread that. Clashing Swords, number 4. The A Song of Ice and Fire, so Game of Thrones, just the first one in this little leather thing. Do any of you have that whole set, maybe in a box? And finally, Hand in Glove by Niall Marsh. The one lone murder mystery in this whole pile. So it was a huge, a Boston Public Library book sale. And I'm glad that I went. I think that Britta and Micah and Hannah could have been a little gentler in nudging me, but I'm glad that I went. I'm glad that I did it. The rain has been largely holding off. It's one of those things where there's rain in the air, but it's not really coming down in sheets. So it's not anything that Frida wants to go out in. The only duress that she was under while I was at the book sale was that she was missing me. It wasn't that she was missing me and she wanted to go out wandering and yelling at people. I don't think she's going to want to go out wandering and yelling at people until the rain has well and truly cleared out. But at least I've got plenty to read until then. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you